Shalom, everybody. It's a beautiful Sabbath. Have anyone been outside this morning just sitting in creation for a little bit? Have anybody been able to do that? Yes, Miss Carr, wasn't that good? I could hear all of the sounds, right, of creation. That was just so beautiful. This morning is a beautiful Sabbath. Before Papa B kicks everything off and give us the intro and set everything up for us, I wanted to kind of just think with you about how precious this moment is, how beautiful it is, and how precious it is. And I have a meditation from Forerunner Meditations that I've been reading, and I'll read a little bit of one of those to you, but just how beautiful this moment is. When I was thinking about this Parsha Ki Tavo, I was thinking about Solomon, Shlomo's prayer, and how he wanted wisdom, from the Holy One to be able to go out and come in before these people. And this is just so powerful of a prayer that I'm influenced by this Parsha to pray that prayer, to stay inside of Shlomo's prayer of, Lord, give me wisdom to go out and to come in before the people. I'm starting to realize how important my life is to others. I'm starting to realize how important it is for me to be cognizant of my behavior, self-aware. I need to be more self-aware when I'm interacting, when I'm sharing space with other people. And so when I think about this Parsha, I think about last week's Parsha, Kitasi, and I think about how it was so important. We call it when we go out to war, we was talking about that, but when I think about the war was mostly within myself, dealing with myself on how I was going to handle the lives of other people that I was going to be trusted with. So I themed last week Parsha, the Parsha of honoring all life. And I learned to honor life by the private times that I've spent with Yeshua, teaching me how important it is to honor all life forms, all of creation, every human being, even those that we encounter in war or conflict or whatever the difficult challenges of those relationships may look like. But I realized I've had to grow, and I've had to heal, and I've had to have my life addressed and looked at. And Abba has done such a beautiful job at just helping me to value my life and to sit in the energy of, I am valued, I am important, I mean something to a lot of people. And that helps me, when I'm in the spaces of those people, be mindful. We do a training in our, my wife is not here, so I won't get in trouble for mentioning my job today. We do a training at my job, and the whole training is about mindfulness. Be mindful, right? When you're interacting with people, when you're talking to people, when you're hearing people, when you're listening to things that are happening around you, when you see the world that we live in, be mindful of who you are. Be mindful of who God is and who he has commissioned you to be. Be mindful. And so when I think of this Parsha, I was reading one of my meditations. I'm going to share this little bit with you. And this is Expressions of the Father's Heart and Affections is what it's called. And it's from Song of Songs 1 and 12. And it says, present yourself to God. And this is, present yourselves to God as being alive from the dead. In other words, worship God as one who is fully accepted and embraced by the affection of God. Do not allow yourself to be weighed down with condemnation or with fear or rejection. Come to his table and partake of all that he has to give you. Come before him to sit and rest. Drink deeply of his presence and allow your spirit to be fed on his truths. Let the realization of Song of Songs 1 and 5, dark am I, yet lovely, empower your heart to just sit at the table of the King and know that it is where you belong. When I think about that, and I don't want to push you in that direction. I know you got to set this up. I think about the dream that you had, or the vision where you were sitting at a table. You were invited there by Yeshua and his company, but you didn't feel like you belonged there, right? And so here, Yeshua takes us through a process of making sure that we know who we are, we feel valued at the table, but understand how important it is to live among other people. We're going to be told in Deuteronomy 28 that he actually wants to cause us to rise high above all the nations. And we need to be aware of what he's saying, because that's not him saying that I want you to walk around feeling and thinking that you're better than everybody. I want you to understand that because of who you are, there is a responsibility to be the light of the world. And I'm lifting you high enough for you to shine as lights and bring glory to me. So last week, we learned to honor all human life. And in doing that, we were honoring God and showing forth the glory of God. And we were maintaining humility and fostering a selfless giving is what we're going to be talking about today. You're going to learn how to stay humble and foster a selfless giving. We're going to learn a whole new meaning, a whole new way of looking at first fruits. And we're going to see exactly why Abba has called us in after having sent us out. Amen? Amen. We got our own mics now.
You do there. It's got to be turned off and mute. Okay, if you would, you can sit or you can stand as you wish. I'm going to sing the Baraku, and we're going to get started with our Torah studies today. Baraku et Adonai Hamvorach. Baruch Adonai Hamvorach Leolam Vayed. Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Asher Bachar Banu Mikol Ha'amin V'natan Lanu Et Toratu Baruch Ata Adonai Noten HaTorah. Blessed are you, Holy One, our God, the Holy One from whom all blessings flow. Blessed are you forever and ever. Blessed are you who sets us apart from all the other nations of the world by giving us his Torah. Blessed are you forever, giver of the Torah. Amen. You may be seated. Thank you. Tony was sharing the issue of mindfulness, and we have a word for that in the Torah, in the kingdom, in the Bible throughout. You see it in English. It's translated as the fear of the Lord, or the fear of Adonai, the fear of Hashem. Fear of Hashem is mindfulness. Mindfulness of who he is, seeing him for who he is, and that also requires us to see us for who we are. It's not just about seeing him. That is the critical first step. If we don't see him, we won't be able to see ourselves as what we really are. But if once we see him and we begin to look at ourselves, we see we are agents, we are representatives, we are impact modules sent to the earth to be loosed, as it may be, into the world, into the nations, into our ethnicities, into our age levels, into our communities, and be able to loose the wisdom and the goodness and the beauty and the majesty of the Creator through words, through conversations, through actions, through behaviors, to model to the world there is a more excellent way. There is a better way to live. That's a big responsibility. I remember when I was young, a little boy, I was once, and I was a little boy in Houston, and that was the time that the Houston Colt 45s, which later became the Houston Astros baseball team, was beginning to start up. We finally had a professional baseball team. Every little boy in Houston wanted to play baseball. So I sign up. My dad signs me up for baseball and go down there. We didn't have T-ball back in those days. It was real baseball. and we had baseball, and I remember, and practice was all fun and games and play, and, I could throw pretty well. I could hit the ball pretty well. I could catch really well for my age. I'm good at this. This is all right. I like this. And then came the first game, and I was batting third in the lineup. And there were people in the stands there to watch. Friends of mine from school were there. My mother and father were there. My sisters were there. And I stood up and I held that bat in my hand. And I'm in the on-deck circle waiting. And then I'm getting nervous. I wasn't nervous in practice. I wasn't nervous whenever we were all gathered around and doing the same thing and whatever. It wasn't a big deal. But when people are watching, and people are watching, and they're expecting good things from you, right? And they're hoping for good things from you. And you walk to the plate and you stand there, and every eye on the place is on you. Baseball is unique among that. Maybe the free throw in basketball. There's nothing in the game of football like that. It's something unique where every eye is on the one who has the bat in his hand and standing there waiting for the pitch to come. And everybody sees if you do something stupid. It's like, ay. Your mother and father go, oh, yeah, that's not my kid. It's not my kid. Yeah. I don't know who is that boy. And sister said, yeah, I told you couldn't do it. At any rate, so you sit there and you feel like something you've never felt before, this level of excitement and enthusiasm, passion and energy, because you need to hit that ball. And on the other hand, there's just calmness and trepidation, fear, something builds, and you just almost wish it was over. But then the ball comes at you, and it looks like a watermelon. And you say, this is what I was born for. This is my moment. Well, that's the way it is with us. When you have the awareness, what was the term you used? Mindfulness of what's going on. The world is watching. It's our moment to shine. We're here on this earth at such a time as this. And we have been taught what to do and how to act in ways that will promote the game plan, that will bring about the agenda, that will represent to the world that we're the team, that this is the team, and this is what now the ball's coming. Here comes society. Here comes the news. Here comes relational problems. Here come politicians saying what politicians say. Here come the ethnicity baiters and the economic class envy insiders. And here come all the peoples and all the trials. And here come all the actors and all the newscasters and all the entertainers of the world saying what they say. And the ball is in the air and it's coming to us. And we are a little bit nervous. But this is our moment. We don't react like they do. We do what we learned in practice. And boy, Parsha Ki Tavo is all about practice for the big game. If you don't understand big games, the ultimate big games, then you really won't get a whole lot out of Parsha Ki Tavo. Parsha Ki Tavo, last week we talked about the fact that we're deployed. We're like special forces, God's special forces, covenant nation, designed to model to the world a different way, not react to things the way the rest of the world and the nations react to things, but instead to behave according to protocols, according to the practices and the things we've learned. And therefore, everything was a rule of engagement in actual enemy territory, as it were, last week. And so last week we left it with Amalek. Amalek will be there. You will always have an enemy that will be at war with you. Get used to it. You are always at war. Those sisters are always in the stands waiting to yell, "You can't hit that ball." Couldn't hit the broadside of a barn. You got nothing. You got nothing. My sisters were particularly cruel. So I understand this whole, the raging of the nations, my mentality. Give my sisters some grace. But at any rate, you see the point. Last week it was like, do you understand what we're up against and what we're facing? You are always going to have an enemy. The enemy is to keep you fine-tuned, to keep you moving forward. You are angry about your enemies. You don't like your enemies. You don't like the fact that you have warfare. The warfare is to keep you fresh and ready. You are not to be defeated by the warfare, but you are to be kept on your toes. And that moment when you got the bat in your hand, you realize this is it. We got to do this. To have that sense of urgency, that sense of mindfulness at all times. And so this week, Moshe is going to change his teaching methodology a little bit, change his focus. It's like he said, now everybody stop what they're doing, and we're going to fast forward to the end of days. Fast forward to the end of days. We've been getting ready to go across the Jordan River into the promised land. We've been talking about what you're going to face when you get there, what your life's going to, the challenges you're going to have when you get there. We've talked about all that. Now I want you to fast forward. Because you see, this is not just about you going into your promised land. That's step one in the plan. The plan is to build that model society. Is to begin to do what I've been teaching you how to do in front of everybody, with everybody watching, like the little boy having to go to the bat the first time in the big game. The big game is coming. He says, now what you understand is the nations are watching. Yeah, the nations that don't like you, the nations that yell in the stands, you can't hit that ball. The ones that mock you, the ones that want you to fail, the ones that want to laugh at you, they're all watching. So fast forward to the end of days. How does this turn out? If I could, sometimes you're watching a baseball. Baseball games are long. They're long to watch. And so you watch one, you watch a couple innings, and say, I wonder how this game's going to turn out. Just kind of fast forward to the ninth inning. Can I go and watch the replay maybe and just figure out what happened in the end? That's kind of the way Moshe says, watch the replay. Let me show you how this game turns out. And what does he say? He says, when you come into the land and you reap the harvest, this is about a harvest. The whole book is about a harvest. The whole creation is about harvest. And when you lose sight for the harvest, when you lose the vision for the harvest, you only fight the battles on a moment-by-moment basis. You don't see the end game. You don't see the end result. You don't connect to the purpose for which this whole thing got started and what you're called for. You lose mindfulness of the future. So he says, let's fast forward. Open your eyes. Now, the people he was talking to, and the people, even us as we read this now, generations later in Texarkana, Texas, we're not crossing the Jordan River tomorrow or the next day. We're here in our little deployments, each one of us in our own little place of deployment. Hooks and DeQueen and Stamps area. What do they get a little town called? Buckner, and wherever else we may be living, Wake Village, wherever we may be living. We're in these little locations, but there's a harvest coming, and we're probably part of it. And there's a time of crossing coming, and beyond crossing, there's a time of, because to reap a harvest, you don't just go in and reap a harvest. You got to go in and prepare the ground. And if you've ever done much gardening, if you've been a place that hadn't been gardened in years, you pull out the stumps and the roots and the rocks, and you till it, or you plow it, or you break it up, and it's a hard work. The hard work's got to be done, and then not just that. Then you got to pick out which seed to sow. Get the seed and sow the seed, and sow it in a way it's going to have the most chance to grow. Then you've got to make sure it's getting water, and you got to make sure it's getting sun, plenty of sun, because these things have to happen for the things to take place. And then you've got to maybe do some things to keep some of the birds away from it, and maybe some of the insects away from it. You protect it in the best ways you can. And then you watch patiently, and you dig new trenches to make water go in. If the trenches break down, because that's all stuff that happens. People step in it, and animals step in it, and you have to redo the trenches and redo the irrigation system. And you got to do all this all summer long. The hard work begins, and then when the harvest comes, then it gets really intense. You gotta cut it. You gotta bundle it. Depending on what it is, you gotta put it in baskets. You gotta clean it. It's hard. This is hard work. This is a lot of things we do with everybody watching. He says, now, I want to give you a picture that your harvest is not going to be like other people's harvests. First of all, he's going to talk about harvest, and we're going to see figs and pomegranates and wheat and barley and olives and grapes and dates, the 7 species of Israel. But he's going to see people. Americans, Russians, British, people from all the tribes of South America and from Africa. He's going to see people from Canada, the Native Americans. He's going to see people of all nations, all ages, all ethnicities. And this is his harvest. He says, I want to show you harvests of figs and pomegranates and dates and olives, so that you understand that the different species are like the different races, the different ethnicities, the different tribes and tongues that I'm calling for my harvest. I want you to get a picture of the harvest, and I want you to understand you don't just get a harvest all at once, you get first fruits too. The first fruits. Look for the first fruits. Now, the thing about the first fruits is if you've ever done much of this kind of gardening or orcharding or vine tending or whatever, it's the excitement that builds as the warm weather comes, whether it be early in the spring for the grains, or whether it be later in the summer for the fruits, or even almost into the fall with regard to the olives. Whatever the crop you in, it has a season when the heat does this thing, because God puts some miracle power, miracle grow into the seed or into the vine or into the tree or into the earth and into the sun. And so the combination of things begin to happen, and at some point, somewhere in your field or somewhere in your orchard or somewhere in your vineyard, you go every day looking, and one day there it is. That sprout has not just been a sprout. Now it's not just been a blossom. It's now forming fruit, the first fruit, whether it be a head of grain, whether sweet or barley, whether it be the blossom that's turned into a piece of fruit for a fig or a pomegranate or a date or later an olive, whatever it is, and it's like this is going to happen. This is going to happen. And there's an excitement builds that I've been working all this time. I've been doing all these things, and I didn't see anything out of it. But today I begin to see something. I begin to see this is going to happen. And how well it happens and how much it happens, I don't have any control over. But there's the first fruit beginning to form. And so the traditions are that you take a ribbon dyed red. And you take that ribbon dyed red, and whether it's in the field or whether it's on the tree or whether it's on the vine, you take that red ribbon and you wrap it around the first things you saw beginning to come to fruition. You mark that. And it sets it apart. It says, this is not mine. This is God's. This is going to go to him in Jerusalem. This is going to go to him. This is never going to be eaten by me or another human being in this area. We're going to take this. And that also tells anyone passing by, because you realize under Torah law, if someone passes through your field and they're just walking past, They have the right to go and grab a handful of what they need that's ripe and they can eat. You're in the land of Israel, right? So this shouldn't be a problem for you. There's plenty. Unless you're just trying to maximize profit. If you're really just trying to live and do your thing and provide for the poor and the widow, then you are okay with them taking a few grains of the wheat or the barley, like Yeshua and his disciples did. They grabbed the wheat or the barley. Or take a fig or two, or a pump, not a basket, just put it in your hand and take it and eat it. So, but now here's the message of the red ribbon. The message of the ribbon, dyed red, is of all the fruit, of all the trees, of all the fields, of all the vines, you may freely eat. But of the branch, of the stalk or the omer, of the portion of this tree that has the red ribbon around it, you shall not eat, because it is not for man to consume. Now, it sounds almost like the Garden of Eden, right? Are we back to the Garden of Eden? And this whole idea of the message of the red ribbon, the rest of the red ribbon is, this is something unique and special. And this is for God and not for man. And so we have that out there, and when the time comes, we watch it grow to fullness of ripening. We don't pick it before it's ripe. When we finally pick it, he says, put it in a basket. Moshe is going to say, put it in a basket. A woven basket, tane, like an old woven, little basket. Whatever it is, whatever crop it is. Different times of year, you'll pick different things. And you put it in a basket, and you put it aside, and you take it up to Jerusalem. You go to Jerusalem 3 times a year, if you live in Israel. I mean, I'd like to go to Jerusalem 3 times a year. I'd like for all of us to go to Jerusalem 3 times a year. Once you get outside the land of Israel, it's very difficult to do. Financially, economically, and whatever. So you do the best you can, go as often as you can, when you can. But at any rate, 3 times a year you live in Israel, and you take this basket with you. You take them to Jerusalem now. Can you imagine? Because, within a week or two, all the harvest of the wheat comes in all over the country. Within a week or two, all the harvest of the barley comes in all over the country. Everyone's little farm. Within a week or two, actually about 4 weeks, all the figs come in. Within about the same period of time, the grapes come. Well, actually, it's 2 months. The grapes come in. Then the later is the olives, and I haven't mentioned the dates, and we haven't mentioned the pomegranates yet. They come in the middle of summer. Now, all through the year, you're doing things. All through the year, you're marking the first fruits. You're setting them aside. You're watching them daily, watching over them, protecting them. Then you've got bundles. You've got baskets. You're not going with one basket. You're going with, when you go. Now, if you're living in Israel, you can go 3 times a year, so you can take a few baskets here. Grain in the springtime, you go for Passover. You take your basket along with your lamb to Jerusalem. Along with your lamb, you take your basket of barley, because nothing else is ripe yet. And then a few months later, you go and you're getting ready to go up for Shavuot, for the Feast of Weeks. And what's ripe then? The wheat. So you take your baskets of wheat. And then you don't have any more times to go up to Jerusalem unless you do it special trip, till Sukkot. And then all the trees, all the figs, all the pomegranates, all the dates, not the olives aren't quite ready yet. You can bring the first fruits of olives, all you can bring. You take them up to Jerusalem. So you take baskets full of things. Now, if you're a priest and sitting in Jerusalem, knowing what time of year it is, it's Passover, or it's getting ready for Shavuot, or it's getting ready for Sukkot, and you're up on the mountain, the Mount of Moriah, where the tabernacle would be set up, and then where David's tent would be set up, and then later where the temple would be built. And you're up there, and you're watching, and the roads all come up from different angles, from different directions, from different parts of the country. Roads all come up, and they all wind their way up the hill, and they come to Mount Moriah. All roads lead to Mount Moriah. And they all come up. They're all ascending. And you can see from Mount Moriah, you can see in every direction roads that go to all parts of the country. And what do you see on those roads? As you begin to walk, when, are they coming yet? And the high priest, are they coming yet? Do you see them yet? And finally, the first fruits begin to appear. The first fruits from the country, from the land side, from the nation begin to come. He said, they're coming. They're coming from Galilee. They're coming from the Negev. They're coming from Beersheba. They're coming from Hebron. They're coming on the roads. They're coming. And then all the roads are crammed and jam-packed, just like caravans from everywhere. Coming up, the pilgrims coming up with their baskets. So Passover with their lambs as well. Coming up with their baskets. And can you imagine the excitement that builds and builds and builds as they get closer and closer? All these different people coming from the different directions. It's heads of household with their children and their wives. Heads of household with the poor that live near to their place. They brought them with them to share the beauty. They have the widows that had no one else to take them. They got the widows. They have the foreigners who are curious, the ones of strange nations. I've never seen this before. What are you going to tell? Oh, come with us. Come up to Jerusalem with us. Come up to Israel with us. This is our testimony to the nations, right? This is the whole idea. Why are we so kind to the strangers? So they can see what we're doing and why we're doing it. And then the Levite and all those are coming, and the procession from all the different areas of the land coming up, and one by one come to the Temple Mount at Mount Moriah and lay down the basket in front of the priest. And they say, what do they say? He says, I want to give you not just a vision for this great harvest. I want to give you vocabulary. I want to put words in your mouth. Because if you talk like the rest of the country, the rest of the world talks, you're going to have your sisters yelling at you, you can't hit the broadside of a barn. I'm going to give you kingdom words, heaven words. I'm going to give you covenant words that will be recited over and over and over again all your life, that will become your testimony. How beautiful on the mountains are the feet of those pilgrims who bring the good news, the good testimony, the good vocabulary, the wisdom of the first fruits, the wisdom of the tithes, the beautiful, majestic words. Now, most of us today, if you ask a farmer as he's coming up to Riceland Mill with his trucks loaded with rice or with whatever grain he's got or other harvest he's got, taking it up to the mill, and you stop him in the interview on the street, right? You stick a microphone in his face and you say, tell me about how the harvest came to be. He said, well, it was hard. A lot of work. Sometimes I didn't think we were going to have a harvest. I planted the ground. I sweated and I toiled till my hands were raw and bleeding. I wore out my machinery and I wore out animals, and it was hard. But I persevered through it and I fought it all. And the weather wasn't good. Sun didn't come when it needed to come, and the rain didn't go away, and the rain didn't come, and the wind didn't blew, and it's a miracle of my hard work and my skill as a farmer to make this process come back. That's the testimony of the nations. I followed all the protocols I learned in the University of Arkansas agricultural system. I used the newest level of hybrid seed that had all sorts of genetic modification in it to keep the insects and the bugs out, and to keep any kind of mildew. Yes, that stuff out of the growth, and that's the reason I have this harvest. And the sister says, "Boo! That's not why you have a harvest." Your skill, your diligence, your hard work, your ideas, your theories is never going to be the reason an agricultural harvest takes place or the kingdom harvest takes place. No, you're just a little player in a great play. And so the first words of kingdom are, my father was a wandering Aramaean. And he was few in number and about to die, about to expire. He's talking about Abraham, of course. And he went down to Egypt. What has this got to do with the harvest, somebody says? Everything. This is the plan. This is the way, which is what set this Egypt in motion. Went down to Egypt, and they were cruel to him. They afflicted him. They placed him in hard bondage. But he grew. He became powerful and mighty. And then they put him under harder bondage. And they cried out. And now it becomes plural. And then we cried out. And then we cried out to God. And he shemad our voice. He tuned his whole being, his whole essence to us. And we became the focus of the heart of his heart and his eyes. And he manifested that by bringing us out of Egypt with a strong hand and an outstretched arm, with a mighty hand and an outstretched, and with great miracles.
You can find this in Psalm 27.
Yeah. Or Exodus chapter 13 and 14, or so many different places. Now, he brought us out with a strong hand and an outstretched arm, a mighty hand and an outstretched arm. And he brought us to this place. How did the harvest come to be? This is how the harvest came to be. And he blessed us. And here I am, Hineni. Look at me. I'm here. It's me. I'm the other end of the spectrum, or the other end of this covenant, and now it's all because I'm part of the covenant that I'm here. And here are the first fruits. Mereshit pri ha'adma, the first fruits of the land that I have brought to you. Now this is end time testimony of an end time people. This is a different story than, man, I worked awful hard for this. And I had to fight the devil and the warriors and the whatever, and the Amalekite and all the insects and the bugs, and only because of my hard work and my intelligence and what they taught me at University of Arkansas Agricultural School did this ever happen. And the world says, see, we didn't believe it for the last 14 generations. There's got to be something bigger than that, something better than that. Well, that's the testimony of the first fruits. And it's strange that we do this every year. If some of you recognize those words that I said, word for word. Those words are word for word out of something that you should be very familiar with. Every year at Passover, the Haggadah contains those very words. And we teach our children, tell our children year after year after year after year, every year of our life, my father was a wandering Aramaean. My bloodline ain't that cool. My father was just about to expire, few in number. And he went down to Egypt, and this is the story of the Exodus being retold. This is the greatest story ever told. This is the story we tell our children because we're told to tell our children every year. The exact words are recited out of Parsha Ki Tavo, the first fruits litany, are given to us at the time of Passover. It's told again year after year after year. Now, you can imagine this is the end time testimony. You can imagine why the religions of this world do not want this to be part of your celebration. They want this to be about them. They want this to be about their anity or their ism. They want this to be about their doctrine and about their superior knowledge and their superior ways of looking at things. He says, no, this will be the testimony that brings a message to the world. So we have the first fruits litany, and we have words put in our mouths. Now, I want to talk about words a little bit and vocabulary. This is one of my favorite subjects. You've probably heard me before. You remember he told Jeremiah the prophet when Jeremiah was just a youth and he was called to be a prophet. He said, don't worry about it. I will put my words in your mouth. When he talked to Moshe He told Moshe. Moshe was saying, "I can't do it. I got a fat tongue, and I don't have any substance to what I say. I just spew. I just talk, and nobody listens to anything I got to say because I'm just talking like the rest of the world talks." He said, "Oh, don't worry about it. I'm going to put my words in your mouth." Now, I love those moments in life. I hope you do too. When he puts his words in my mouth. Not what I learned, not what I studied, not what I wrote an outline about. When I'm in the process of stopping what I'm thinking and what I know, and almost like waiting on him for a split second or whatever, and all of a sudden something comes out, it's like I just hit a channel of something coming out of heaven, and that came out of my tongue. Nothing I can take credit for. I can't reproduce it. I can't make it happen. That was just, anyone experience that in life? I hope you're experiencing it every week. I hope you're experiencing it all the time. Obviously, we also talk. We have conversations with our family members. We have conversations with people at work. We have conversations with people online. We do all that kind of good stuff. But isn't it nice every once in a while when all that stuff goes blank and we just speak the very oracles, the very words of the living God into a situation? Because he always knows what to say. You know, we have this famous saying among, people who do funerals and weddings and all sorts of sickness, dealing with sickness and all kinds of stuff. And it's like, what do you say when you go to their house or when you go to what do you say to comfort them? He says, it doesn't make any difference what I say because what I say means nothing. What I hope to do is find that channel, find that flowing river, and then let God say whatever he's going to say and let them hear whatever he's speaking to them. Now that, there's no formula. There's no set of things that you do. You just wait and see what he says. Well, this is the key factor of learning how to speak God's vocabulary. Now, certain things we know are not God's vocabulary. And Tony, I'm going to get you engaged in this conversation here in a minute, so be thinking about how this might go. I want to talk about things that we should know by now are not in God's vocabulary. That are the vocabulary of human beings, that are vocabulary of spin masters and talking heads on TV, of politicians, of educators, of entertainers. These are the things that you hear about and see on the news and on the weather and on the whatever and all the entertainment venues that you go to, the songs that you listen to on radios or MP3s or internet streaming or whatever we do these days to listen to music. The words are not the vocabulary of the king, and they're anti-kingdom vocabulary in many situations. Did you know that the kingdom of heaven, think about Hebrew language, just use the Hebrew language as the key into the vocabulary. There were no curse when they began to resettle Israel and use the Hebrew language again, revive the Hebrew language. They only had the Bible and the Talmud and the various different religious writings to build the language from. There was a marked absence of something. There were no curse words. There was no profanity. They had no words for profane acts or profane things. There's no lewd comments. There was nothing like that in the language. Wow. He will restore to us in the latter days a pure language. Well, that's just the Hebrew language. Now let's talk about that. Does the kingdom of heaven ever use profanity? Does it ever use lewd, suggestive talk? Does it ever use labels? Derogatory, negative labels? What are the elements of unkingdom vocabulary, anti-kingdom vocabulary? So you deal with this in a clinical context often, recognizing what is consistent with kingdom talk, kingdom vocabulary, and certain things that we should know instinctively, you shouldn't be part of our vocabulary. And this is a major role as we get ready for the end of days, to get our vocabulary in line with the kingdom vocabulary, and to get stuff out of our vocabulary, out of our conversations, that the world thinks is normal, too normal, because it's leading to the same old result that we always have. So, Tony, what are your thoughts about the vocabulary issue?
Well, the nomenclature that's associated with
the world right now has it's infectious, actually. This is what we're starting to see. Our children, they're educated to this language. The school systems now are communicating that way with the children. They're actually allowing certain ways of vocabulary or certain ways of talking because they're saying it's more therapeutic if the child has the freedom to express themselves, right? And so now they're telling the children that this particular language, these ways of talking, hurtful ways we were taught as kids, that this is really just a way that a child is expressing themselves, and that should not be oppressed. That should not be suppressed. They're actually now promoting in our systems that children should be allowed to talk a certain way, especially if they are experiencing the anger emotion. We should take it as if it's them processing the anger, right? And so there are no off limits words when a kid or a human being or an adult, when they are processing, right? And so that's the community that's the world that we live in right now. And so if we accept those, and I've seen the damage done by those type of those ways of thinking and speaking, we're telling the narrative that we're being sold now is that sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. We're going back to that now, right? Because we're starting to say, just suck it up, adults, right? Let people be people. Let them talk the way they're talking. Now what I'm starting to see is, because there is a whole different version of Christianity that have come online, that version of Christianity have also embraced that concept of us being able to use that nomenclature to speak to our children, to put those labels there. Now we had a war on the stigma of mental illness, to where we wanted to get away from certain labels and things like that, and certain diagnosis codes and all that, and put people back into a humanization process, right? They're human, let's deal with them as human. But then we came right back and put different labels on them, and then we gave them a list of labels that they can now choose, which puts them back in that process. Does that make any sense? And so we, as a kingdom, I love this because he puts words in our mouth. One of the first things I remember when I got saved, gave my life to the Lord, I was in high school. And I had grown up in Chicago, and then my father moved me here, and then, so on and so forth. But my language was slang, right? That's all I knew, okay? Slang, all right? I came from a gang background, and so everything was about slang. That's the way I communicated, all right? Thug language, if anybody don't know what I'm talking about. And so as a thug, that's how I spoke. That's how I communicated. I never forget when the Lord saved me. I say that. I don't know a better way to say it. But when I answered the call to come to the Lord, the first thing that began to change was my words. Before I graduated high school, all I had was profanity. Right? Every sentence, all my music that was piped into my spirit, it was all about slang. It was pop culture. The first thing he did was he started to address my heart and deal with my words. When I graduated high school, which I don't know if I really graduated or they just I think they were saying he can't come back here. Raise his grades. And so they pushed me out. And I came out of school and I couldn't say a complete sentence. Right? I didn't go to college because I had children early, so I had to work. And the first thing that the Lord did was put his words in my mouth. And my friends from school right now do not recognize me. Right? And it's not because I've changed so visibly. Yes, that's been a change. They don't recognize my words. Because now my words are filled with life. They're filled with the energy that brings forth and supports life versus a whole nother set of words that was always destructive, that was always tearing things down, that was always derogatory, that was always demeaning to women and to other people of my race. It was just a horrible way of speaking. But I learned all that from the culture I grew up in. I grew up in a gang culture where my mother's brothers were gang members and my dad's brothers were pimps. And so that was my introduction into adulthood. And you would have thought there's no way this boy is ever going to be able to do anything other than be this, right? But God wanted me to be sitting here next to my mentor, being filled with words that give life. Words hurt.
Now, can y'all hear me? Okay,
yes,
no. Good. The first stage of the revolution that needs to take place for the kingdom to come forth, to begin to manifest in real time, is for the people of God to have a radical shift in vocabulary. To do away with, put aside certain means of communication that are normal in the world. This may feel uncomfortable for you if you have gotten caught up, like most of us do from time to time, in the language, the vocabulary that the world uses. From the profanity to the lewd discussions about sexuality and sensuality to it's okay to you to do this kind of behavior, even if you're 4 years old, and talk about it and use terms about it, to all the things that the world is saying, all the way, and even to labeling, people using labels like racist and homophobe and all negative, narcissist, and all the different negative language that people like to use that are not found anywhere in the Bible or not part of the Hebrew context. Instead, they're false labels, changing our vocabulary. Now, the vocabulary is important. Are we ready to make this shift? Today is today, Hayom Hazeh, is this day, a day for us to reconnect with divine vocabulary, heavenly vocabulary, and speak the words that are given to us by God. Because if it's not, then we'll keep on mixing the message. And the mixed message is a corrupt and a confusing and a deceptive message. Now, this is a challenge for us because, you see, I'm going to tell you next that communication is not just the words that you use. But let's start with the words, okay? What words, don't yell out loud. What words do you need to get out of your vocabulary today? Never again will that word come out of my mouth. Because it is anti-kingdom. And it tells the world the wrong message. What sounds so cool, I like saying it. Oh, there you go. Your flesh is all caught up into it. You're addicted to it. It's an addiction. This is a day for breaking addictions. breaking word addictions, breaking thought addictions, breaking anti-kingdom addictions. Now, the Holy One told me today, this is a day of breaking addictions when I got in the car. This is a day for breaking addictions, so let's break some addictions today. Let's make this a day we remember. Parsha Tavo in the year 5783, in the first day of September in 2023. How about that? You want to remember that day. The 16th of Elul, 5783. This is a day for breaking those verbal vocabulary addictions to the ways of thinking and the ways of talking of the world. What words?
Testing. Testing. Yeah, we'll just put that. Turn that off. Don't use that one. Okay, we won't use that one. We'll cross. What words need to come out of our vocabulary? What needs to be declared off limits to us because of the kingdom that we represent? Because we're up to bat. Because they're watching. The kids are listening. The families listening. The angels are listening. Heaven's waiting and watching. All heaven peers over the edges, the great cloud of witnesses, and is this the generation? Is this the group that will do this? And yes, we should be that. Now, I want to go forward. Now, if we've made those commitments, and I'm just going to stop and take a moment of silence. And I'll say a prayer over you, but I want you to I want this to be your commitment, not just mine. What words, what phrases, what terms, what language do we need to do away with forever? So today's the breaking point. Father, our hearts are wide open and we're hungry like little children needing to be fed. We want you to put your words in our mouth. Your words are sweet to the taste. Your words have life. Your words have hope. Your words have purpose and meaning. Father, sort through and search out all the negative vocabulary and phraseology and bullet points and labels, profane, lewd things, meaningless things, spurious things. Purge, cleanse, purify our mouths that we may be able to speak your words without corruption, without confusion, without deception. Pure words from pure hearts, Father. Do a miracle in our hearts and our mouths. Make the very thought or the taste of those words that we're going away from, when they enter into our thoughts or the throat, may we begin to feel sick and stop. Okay. I guess that's amen. Now, let me just begin to tell you that we communicate in other ways besides words. Words are something that is really visible and audible and people know it. But we also communicate in many other ways, nonverbal communication. It starts from the way we dress. I'm not trying to be some sort of a prude. I'm not trying to tell you have to dress a certain way because, I'm telling you, think about how you're presenting yourself. And teach your children to think about not just what's fashion. That should never be the criteria. But what honors God? What identifies us as being a unique, separate group of people as opposed to being like everybody else? What clothes, what hairstyles, what what adornments. What message are we sending to the world? What communication are we doing that is corrupt, confusing, profane, just as those words are? What are we highlighting about our bodies? I'm not as young as I used to be, so I don't have to worry too much about that anymore. But, you know, what part of your body are you emphasizing with the clothing that you wear? Why are you drawing attention to something like that? And tell your little girls and your little boys. It's about boys as well as girls. It's about learning how to dress in ways, not look like a bunch of prudes, but wear things that honor him and that tell the message, we're not like the rest of the world. And the same thing with regard to the way in which you carry yourself. You know, Tony was talking earlier about how he's changed and how he has awareness or mindfulness now. And I can testify from knowing him, the changes that have been wrought over in his life. I've, 25 years since we've known each other. This is happening all the time in him, and it's really a marked transformation in Tony's life. I'm just using him as an example because he's sitting here beside me. And I think you all know him and know this probably to be true. And he brought it up. He opened the door. He opened the door. We have that saying in law, he opened the door. now, the idea here is that how you carry yourself, with what level of awareness of who you are and why you're here. You know, one thing that they used to teach you, this is kind of weird, when you walked into the batter's box, you didn't spit and you didn't scratch. Okay, not in the batter's box. Because the cameras are on you. And people are watching you. It hasn't always been true with regard to baseball players in major leagues or whatever. But the idea of the process is understand, know where you are and before whom you stand. And carry yourself appropriately. Now, this also goes to the emotions that you express. You know, people think, well, Bill, you just don't believe in emotions. No, I believe fully in them. I believe they're gifts of God to help us to process things and turn them over to Him. And they're warning signs that if we let them get too out of hand, that bad trouble is going to come to our family and our household and us as a result. So it's kind of like that check engine light. All anger is a check engine light. It's not something to indulge or talk about or express. It's something to say, oh, I got to check engine soon. Something's wrong internally. If I'm angry, it's not because of what's on the external side. It's what's on the internal side. It's something wrong with me. Whatever, I should be able to handle this situation without getting angry. I should be able to handle the situation without getting outraged. The world tells you you should be outraged. Matter of fact, it's like, what's wrong with you? You're not outraged. How can I make you outraged? Now, the issue is how you carry your emotions and what you do with your emotions. This is a part of communication. If you communicate to the world that I am angry like you're angry, I have no shalom like you, I have no joy, I have no hope, I'm just like you, then you have just anti-kingdomed yourself out of a testimony. You have just declared to them, you're not anything. You're just another failure of life. It has nothing to offer them. So learn how to watch. And this is one of the things where I think, to me, online stuff, social media is extremely valuable. Dangerous. But you can see it in my post, and I can see it in yours. Are we walking in peace and shalom? Or are we upset about 14 different things just like the rest of the world is? Does the kingdom mean anything to us, or is it just language we talk about? Just words we talk about when we get together on Saturday or Sunday or whatever day we like to meet? Is it just theory? Is it just ideas? Or is Yeshua a real person who speaks to us and talks to us and we walk with and learn from? Because he doesn't do that kind of stuff. Well, how about this other means of communication besides the way you dress, the way you present yourself, the way you handle and deal with your emotions? There are so other ways, just your facial expressions and the way, because they can see the way you roll your eyes or the way you toss your shoulders or the way you cross your arms, what kind of an attitude you're in. You see, learning how to be the whole person, integer, a whole person, a real person, not someone who says one thing with their mouth, out of one side of their mouth, but acts in a way that doesn't show the same level of kingdom attachment that the rest of the world does. This is a key factor for us. So when I had you go through your moment of silence and discuss things, actual words and phrases and labels that you might need to never use again because it's not kingdom mentality, think about how you dress, how you look, how you present yourself, how you carry and handle and process emotions. Because that's supposed to be done. Emotions are supposed to be processed like David did in the Psalms. This is psalmistry. To take your emotions and don't go to the news with it. Don't go to your neighbor with it. Don't go to the media with it. Don't go to your friends with it. Go to God with it. And have your conversations and let him take the sting and the emotion out of it and heal you and bring you back to where you can talk calmly again. And it's strange. You watch the Psalms, you notice if you go through these lists, or maybe you take 2 or 3 Psalms, but then you go see, he started out really upset about something. Fearful, angry, worried, mad, offended. And by the time it's like, hallelujah, praise the Lord, you all will give thanks to you in the sanctuary. He processed it without having to get anybody, his wife is involved, or his husband, or a woman or her husband involved, without getting the children engaged in the controversy and the fight. He processed it through song and through psalm and through conversations with the Holy One and through journaling, writing it down. That's why we have him, because he wrote them down. Well, I hope you understand some of the things we're talking about. As we get ready for a great harvest, a great season to come, the great end game of God to come forth, there needs to be a change in us, a transformation in us, and a rededication to why we're really here. Looking a lot less like the world than we've been looking. Talking a lot less like the world than we've been talking. Behaving a lot less like the world than we've been behaving. And that is when we're ready to be bundling our first fruits and carrying them with us. So we talk about the first fruits far, far in the future. Do you have a vision for the harvest? This is one of the things that I think we've lost over the course of the last, I don't know, maybe. With the Jesus movement days, and I keep harking back to that because that's where I came in. We didn't have much. We didn't have great funds or money. We didn't have we had pretty good music. I thought was pretty good. But that was mostly played on little guitars, acoustic guitars, you know, and ordinary voices like, you know, we sounded like Bob Dylan out there on the back of a flatbed. It wasn't like we were singing high praise, high church. We weren't in the soprano range, upper soprano ranges. We were singing ordinary talk. We were singing ordinary things. Well, I thought we had pretty decent music, but what we had was vision. We believed it was not only possible, it was inevitable. The kingdom was coming. The king was coming in our lifetime. The king was already here. We were manifesting. We were first fruits of that kingdom coming. That's we believed it. We looked at each other like, kingdom! Kingdom! He's coming. He's real. This was the whole idea of the Jesus movement, the whole power behind it. It wasn't money. It wasn't, somebody wrote the script or wrote a doctrine or a set of thesis about the Jesus movement. He was real, and he came alive. Now, this idea of coming alive again, a sense of vision that he's doing something in the earth. Have we lost that? Has that escaped us? Have we now become theologians? Have we now become to be full of programs and education systems, and we can recite creeds, and we can have religious services. We call them services. I love that word, services. Oh, where that came from, religious services. Anyway, who are we serving anyway? But at any rate, we have this religion stuff. We have politics and ideology and science, but do we have a vision for a great harvest coming to earth. You know, Yeshua's first message was, make teshuvah, teshuv. For the kingdom of heaven is at hand. You can't see it. It's right there. It's right there on the tip of your fingers. It's right all around you. Now, I hope this vision, this return of vision is one of the great radical revolutionary things that's taking place in this generation. May it come in us, because it's going to come in a people. Another Jesus movement's coming. A bigger Jesus movement, a better Jesus movement than the one we had back in the 60s and 70s. A lot more powerful, a lot more international. That was international. This is getting better, more international, and more transformative, because we have seen the world devolve even worse than it was. We thought Haight-Ashbury was bad. Cosmic, cosmos. Yeah, that's right. Good, Rick. And so the idea is, are you catching the vision? Moshe wants us to go into the land. He wants us to go into life with this vision. And when we lose the vision, without vision, the people who don't have any vision perish. The people we were supposed to give the vision to and share the vision with perish. And it's on us. It's on our watch. And we strike out when we're up at bat. Well, this is the challenge that we have facing us now. Moshe is at the crescendo of Torah. I mean, this is just about it. Next week in Nitzavim, the climax of Torah takes place. And his basic question is, choose. And it's like that sound rings in my ear all year long. Bacharta haita. Choose life. It's before you. You got to grab it. You got to go with it. Choose life. And that's the message he's going to culminate. The essence of Torah will end with that. Oh, but then he's going to sing a song. The song of Moshe. And then he's going to give us a blessing. The Vezot Baracha. The last message. And that blessing is supposed to be have the energy in it that will carry us into another year, another higher level, up another rung around the mountain, another ring around the sun, as the case may be. So we're ready to have this transformation take place. I hope we're ready. I have a sense of urgency about this. I know we say this from time to time. I want to say it again. And I've had enough religion. I've had enough meetings for the sake of meetings. I'm not trying to be rude or jealous or judgmental or any of those things. I got a hunger. I got a thirst. Do you have that hunger and do you have that thirst? Is it building in you? You know what my job is? Not to teach you. Not to teach you Hebrew, although I enjoy doing that. Not to teach you Torah, although I enjoy doing that. I am supposed to be here to build and stir that enthusiasm. Paul said that I might be with you to stir up the gift that is within you. Stir up the passion. I'm a stirrer. That's a pretty humble state. I'm just a spoon. Really. When you get right down to it, I'm just a spoon. I'm supposed to hear stirring up your heart, your passion, the essence of who you are and why you're here on the earth at such a time as this. To get your energy level back up, to get your enthusiasm level back up, get your vision back up, as opposed to getting swallowed by the mess of the earth. So that's kind of what I see. I hope you're tired of forms of religion and creeds and theologies and theories. And, you know, that's why I look at certain things and I say, really seriously, we're going to talk about flat earth. We're going to talk about theoretical pronunciation of names. Is that what we got to talk about? Where's the life in it? Where's the power in it? Where's the energy in it? Where's the kingdom in it? Well, I want the kingdom. And so now I know I've called you to some radical things. I've called you to some movement because I know next week he's going to say choose. And I want you ready to choose. I want us to be already in the chosen mode. So that's kind of where we start with the issue of first fruits. We have more to talk about. We have the 3-year tithe. Actually, it's a 7-year agricultural cycle, but we'll talk about the 3-year tithe cycle. We have another episode of writing the Torah on stones, the stones of remembrance, like big mezuzahs. All as we enter the land, it's like as you have a mezuzah on your house, we put up a monster mezuzah bearing all the words of the Torah and all the languages of the earth, where everyone who passes by on the King's Highway going through Shechem will see the stones of remembrance set up saying, this people is not like other people, this land is not like other lands. God has ordained for men to be a higher level than what we're operating at. And this is your model, this is your example of what it's supposed to look like. A little pressure, just a bit of pressure. You're up to bat. Get the bat in your hands, go to the batter's box, don't spit, don't scratch. Eye on the ball, hit the ball out of the park. That's the game plan, okay? All right, Tony, we've got 5 minutes for a break. Kind of take us up to break.
Okay, when we come back from break, we'll summarize this Kingdom of Heavenly Scented Mindfulness Revolution. Is what I've named this, right? And so I've already, if you didn't get it, I wrote it down. So I have 5 stages of this that we are to focus on because we are in the process of building this society in the earth, setting this culture in place so that the people of the world will have that. They'll need that. Our children will need that. And so we'll talk about that. We'll start this off after the break, actually talking about this. I'll read this and we'll let this take us into the break. So it says, Moshe kicked off the present discourse in Deuteronomy 4:44. His primary purpose in this discourse has been to give us a divine blueprint for our future. That's really important, and I'm glad you put that there, so that we will know where we are going and what kind of impact we are called to have there. Now, that's the reason I wanted to read that, is because as we talk about this Kingdom of Heavenly Scented mindfulness revolution, this revolution is about making sure we understand the kind of impact we're called to have. And I think sometimes we get lost, that gets lost because of what we're dealing with, because of the world and the way we're interacting with it and what we're being told and shown. I think sometimes the distraction piece of that is working, because now our focus, we become obsessed with that narrative, and we're trying to get away from it, but there are some areas that we haven't yielded to the Spirit to heal us. And so I talk about being healed and delivered from those traumatic experiences. That's what we struggle with when it's time to live selfless, right? And this particular parsha helps us to see what selfless living looks like, where we're not always focused on ourselves. When you come from poverty like I did, when you come from stark poverty like I did, when you've been homeless like I have, the tendency is to obsess over anything you get. And then you become very protective of it. You defend it a lot. You defend it in theory. You defend it in ideology. You defend it in doctrine, because you're trying to hold on to what you have, because you're trying not to go back to where you came from, not realizing that God delivered. I like the fact that we don't just give, but we give with a script, because that script keeps us reminded of where we came from and who brought us out. And if I keep that in mind, then I'm not scared. I'm not in fear of going back into poverty. Then I don't get angry when somebody threatens my revenue, my income, my what I use to take care of my wife and kids. And so being homeless, that scared me. It was traumatic. And so I came out of homelessness with the mindset, I'm never going to be homeless again, because I'll never trust anything else that has the ability to threaten my income. And then I became angry and frustrated with anything and anybody that's threatening my income stream because I felt that's how I ended up homeless. That's not how I ended up homeless. We'll come back after the break and we'll tell you 5 things that you can do to start setting in place the kingdom of heaven centered mindfulness revolution.